This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
Welcome in, roadies. How's it going? We are your hosts. This is the Fantasy Roadshow. My name is Ryan. This is Mike, and this is another Mike LaFemina, contributor with Sports Ethos. Mike, how you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
You got to take him off mute. I knew you were going to forget.
I told him not to forget.
Yeah, I all scatterbrained over here doing two-a-days. You know how it is.
Sorry, I cut you off anyway, so this will be a better
Mike,
run.
I apologize. Now, how about now? How you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Doing good, guys. Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
So today we're going to get into a quick intro on Mike, what he does at Sports Ethos, and then he's going to give us an intro into DFS. That's a space that I have known about for a while. I've kind of dabbled in it, but not like seriously or even with any kind of strategy. So, you know, just throwing together a lineup on Thanksgiving because I wanted to win $1 million.
Yeah.
But
while you're on the toilet, just throwing it together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of what we're going to get into today, but let's buckle up.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, Mike. So thanks for coming on. I would say, I don't know, Ryan, maybe fifth guest. We've had a couple now.
It's hard. It is so hard to keep track now. These 2 days, I'm telling you, I'm getting all the episode numbers all jumbled in my head. But fifth sounds about right.
Yeah, so somewhere around there. So
fifth's good. That's a good number. I'll take it.
Yeah, five's a good number. I'm glad we could have you on. I'm excited to learn more about the DFS space and about you. So let's start off just where you're from, who your favorite team is, and then we're going to ask you to give us a little breakdown of your favorite team. That's kind of how we intro in everyone, all of our guests thus far. So,
yeah. So I'm born and raised in Connecticut, still living in Connecticut. Favorite team is embarrassingly the Cowboys. It's just been in the family for years and years, and the losing and tradition has been passed down, excluding the 90s and 70s. But it's been a lot of disappointing years. But Cowboys through and through for me.
So Cowboys is a family thing, but was there some Southern blood in you, or was it just?
No, not that. Like my aunt lives in Texas, but this was well established before she was ever down there. From my grandfather, he was allured to the Cowboys of the 70s, and it just kind of passed down to my dad, passed down to me, and it just. That's how it's been.
Here you are. Well, hey, I personally think we just talked NFC East. I think there's a very realistic chance that the Cowboys win the division, certainly make the playoffs. So, things are heading in the right direction. I'd like to hear about what you think for the fantasy outlook for, what are we going to see from the Cowboys in the fantasy space?
So probably not a super original take, but very, very high on Pollard this year. Obviously, no Zeke, not too big of anybody behind him to really threaten snaps, I would say. Deuce Vaughn seems to be getting some buzz with his shimmy in the past couple of days. But, Pollard, excellent pass catcher, explosive. Let's see if he can handle a bigger workload. I have no reason to suspect he can't. So I'm kind of into Cooks this year too. I think he's easily an upgrade on the wide receiver 2 compared to the past few years that they've had, other than when they had Cooper and Lamb combo. But I think he's a good deep ball threat. He's an upgrade over Gallup for sure. And I think he can open the field up for Dak. And then the tight end space, I'm still a little confused. It seems like Ferguson's taking the hold of the job. I just don't know if he's going to be as big a priority as Schultz was. It's still to be determined whether that was more a Schultz thing, Schultz-Dak kind of chemistry thing, or it's just a product of the offense. Obviously, Kellen Moore is not there anymore. So we'll see what McCarthy and company bring to that. But Cooks and Pollard are the highlights for me from a fantasy perspective.
Are you concerned at all about McCarthy calling plays now that Kellen Moore is gone? Or are you what's your gauge on that?
Not overly concerned. It sounded stupid, I know, at the end of the year when the run the damn ball comments and all that. But I don't know if it's a product of he had Aaron Rodgers, but when he was in Green Bay, they always had a higher pass rate over expectancy than league average. So I'm not super worried about it yet until proven otherwise. They have the weapons to throw the ball. I expect them to still throw it at a pretty good clip.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Dak does, right? I have CeeDee Lamb. Early on, I had him as wide receiver 3. I think now I have him as wide receiver 4. But super high on him. I think, he continues to take a step forward. He's one of the best in the league. Main question that I have for you is, after hearing you talk it through, so I thought that Zeke was for sure going to come back to the Cowboys.
I thought so too.
Then he went to the Patriots, and I kind of saw like that could have been a reality, right? But I thought for sure Cowboys. So do you see them bringing in a Fournette, maybe a Hunt, or is it Pollard, is it Malik Davis, and is it Deuce? Like what is?
I think that's the plan for now. I haven't seen a whiff of Fournette or Hunt even visiting with Dallas. I think they have had some interest in bringing Zeke back, but obviously I don't know if it was the numbers or a pride thing for Zeke, but
I think that's what I think it ended up being. I think he went out to the market, tried to get paid. Maybe he wasn't going to get the number he wanted to. And at that point he had just moved on from the Cowboys and didn't want to be that veteran that tucks his tail and kind of, comes back. Yeah. That's what I thought it was.
So I think it's just going to be Davis and Deuce Vaughn with.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, if you see Deuce being a legitimate playing a legitimate role, which it seems like he could be, then that might make up the snap percentage that you would otherwise be missing. Do you want Malik Davis to be the guy that takes all secondary reps? Probably not. But if Deuce Vaughn can come in there and be a change of pace, speed back, then I think it starts to make sense. So they obviously must see something in him there, as we've all seen this past preseason game. But that's really exciting.
I forget who mentioned it. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I forget who mentioned it. I saw it, but I thought they had a pretty good comp from. They said he looked like a little Darren Sproulsy, kind of same frame, same shiftiness. Which obviously, if he ended up being Darren Sproles, that'd be
incredible,
a great change. That's probably the high end of outcomes, but it's one preseason game, and camp talk of everybody looks great in camp, right? We'll see. Temporary conditions, but
it's exciting.
So far, so good.
Yeah, it's exciting. So let's move on to what you do at Ethos, how you kind of came into the Ethos world, and just where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
Sure. So I mostly do DFS delivery articles. I've been going strong on PGA throughout this year. Going to be doing more of that, doing a little bit of best ball content for Ethos this year. You can find it in the draft guide and on the Sports Ethos page. A lot of my thoughts and ideas, I post to my own Twitter, which is, at MLaFem10. We'll go into the promo later, but Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it is the mainstay here.
Ryan calls it the X machine. Did you hear that?
I love it.
Machine.
I love it.
The X Factor.
Yes.
Okay, so are you going to be shifting to DFS? Are you going to be releasing lineups? Are you going to be giving player recommendations? What do you foresee your role there being in the NFL season?
So I'll be doing a preview of each week. I'll be giving a few studs and a few low priced options for each position, kind of just with a little bit of an intro of my thoughts on the slate, because every week is a different puzzle, right? There's different pricing, there's different game environments to look at. It's a little more involved setting these lineups than setting your redraft league. For your redraft league, you maybe have one or two decisions you're making every week. Who's my wide receiver 3 or something like that. But your quarterback's your quarterback. You're locked in, right? You play your studs. It's easy game, right? But so I'll be doing that, and then I'll be active in the Discord as well. Sunday mornings asking lineup questions, going over all that. So.
Okay, great. So the way that we're going to navigate this conversation, it's going to be very conversational. I want it to be an intro to DFS. I know, Ryan and I spoke about how we've played in the past. We both understand fantasy football at a in-depth level, right? But and I think I understand. I have a very strategic brain to where in leagues, I am taking every single competitive advantage that has ever existed and exposing it. For example, Ryan is a commissioner of a league. I think Wednesday at 3:37 a.m. waivers clear on Yahoo, and I'm awake and I'm sharking. I don't even set an alarm. My brain wakes me up and I'm sharking. Making those shark moves. So I think he put it as 2 p.m. these past few years and tried to take away the little edge that I had there. But, my brain works that way. So when I first started creating rosters, it was I would go, all right, what do I think are going to be the highest scoring games? And of course I would look at, over-unders and stuff like that. But also intuitionally, that's kind of where I started. High scoring games, stacks is really how I started building lineups. What is it that you do? What is industry consensus? What is the roster construction part look like in DFS?
So a couple different things there, right?
Yeah, I guess I should have also prefaced there's 50-50, there's tournament plays.
I'd like to cover all the different categories.
Let's start with that, right? So first things first, before even getting in the rosters, is your contest selection. What's your risk tolerance? So they offer on DraftKings. I'm going to talk DraftKings here.
Perfect.
So they offer a variety of different games that you can play. You can play just heads up with a one-on-one against another guy. That in those scenarios, you're not worried about correlation and stacking and all that. You're just trying to build your best, play the best plays kind of play, right? You're not worried about ownership or anything like that. Then there's cash games is what the lingo for it, 50-50s. So you're half the field gets double their money, the other half gets nothing. Those lineups you're trying to, again, you're not really worrying about ownership. You're not worrying about stacking. You're just worried about relatively safe, it's the NFL. There's always wonky business going on, but safe plays, you're trying to get in that top half. It doesn't matter if you finish first or 500th or whatever. You just want to get paid, right? Then you get into the tournaments. That's where you got to start thinking, using projections. Whether you want to create your own, you want to pay a site for their projections, preferably Sports Ethos but wherever you want to go for that. I would recommend, if you're going to be a big tournament player, getting familiar with optimizers and using those projections and putting them into an optimizer. Especially in a lot of these tournaments, you can enter up to 150 lineups into them. So obviously you're not going to sit there and hand build 150 lineups. It's unless you are just the loneliest man on the planet. But even then, and then it's just paying attention to news, right? So I have a list on Twitter of just beat writers and people from the Athletic and just, the Schefters of the world, people, the newsbreakers, right? And you're just trying to get any edge you can about possible seeds of playing time. Just obviously looking at over-unders, there's just weather. There's a lot of factors that go into making a lineup. For sure.
So the way that my brain works, like I have always entered rosters as that 50-50 head-to-head. Like I even when I was joining tournaments, I was like, this is the best roster I can create. If all of these guys hit, I'm still going to win. Why is that a disadvantage entering tournaments that way?
So, especially for those large field tournaments, right, where you got to beat 1 million people and come in first, like though, I wouldn't even recommend playing those first up.
Glorified lottery is what I used to call them.
Exactly. You have to hit the absolute stone cold nuts, and then maybe you'll finish 10th or something. Like it's just insane. So what you really want, you're shooting for the most upside in tournaments, right? So when you have your best plays on the page, it looks great, but a lot of other people are thinking that same way too. So you could have 30% of the field playing Lamar Jackson, right? Everyone, say week 1, they're at Houston. It seems like an obvious smash spot. It probably would be, but you have to play the ownership game and think, well, what if that fails? Could I get away with a Joe Burrow at Cleveland and stack him with Jamar Chase? And you just got to think, what's the best possible scenario for this game, and how can I incorporate that into my lineup? So if you just have, say, the Bengals and Browns, that game goes nuts, and you only have Joe Burrow in it, you'll do okay, but your lineup's going to shoot up the leaderboard if you have Burrow and Chase and you ran it back with Njoku, let's say, and like you're getting all aspects of that one game that went nuclear that week. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a question though about when building these lineups. Does the strategy with like where you want your studs and where you want your values, does that change based on the type of contest you're running, or you kind of keep the same theory in that sense?
Yeah, it's not so much the contests, but more so the pricing available that week, because the pricing's different every week. So week 1 this week, we got Lamar's the top price quarterback. He's $8,000, right? Jalen Hurts is $7,800, but that's because we have no Mahomes. He's Thursday night, and we have but to answer your question a little more concisely, yeah, it's more pricing, I think, that determines my roster build than a specific who I want to be the stud. But sometimes there's such obvious plays at court, like this quarterback play is far and away like the obvious answer this week. And that would be more of a 50-50 build for me, like plugging that guy in, because that's the quote unquote safe play, right? Yeah.
So are you going to be, I imagine in your write-ups, that's going to be a part of your write-up, right? Like this is your, smash player, but he's going to be heavily owned. So I guess my question then moves to, when I thought I was going to get into DFS seriously, in my mind, it almost thought of it as like your risk tolerance in an investment portfolio. So if I went 75% 50-50s and 25% contests, what would my hit rate need to be in order to cover my nut on the contest? Right. So what does that look like? Is that accurate? Am I on the right train of thought? Is that what you're doing? Is that what the professionals are doing? And what does that bar curve actually look like?
So I don't have it down to the last dollar on what it needs to be, but I do a variety, right? So I do probably 50% of the bankroll that I'm spending in a given week on 50-50s and heads up. I think I have a pretty good edge in the head-to-heads. So it's really just finding out what games you're good at too, and attacking those. Some pros strictly play tournaments because they crush them. They have that's their wheelhouse. That's what they do. Some guys just play high stakes 50-50 games, and that's all they play. Some guys just do heads up. Some play them all. I play everything. I'd skew 50-50 of the cash games and head-to-heads, and then take my shots in the tournaments. Because what I'm doing in the tournaments is, there's a lot of losing in tournaments. It's not easy, but you're kind of trying to bide your time, bide your bankroll. So hopefully 2 or 3 times a year you have that right combination locked in, and you can make some decent money at it for sure.
Yeah. So in terms of like finding these, so that's why like I don't think I could ever have success in the tournament plays, because like these, I mean, granted, I know some of these guys that break out and have huge games, but like to me, that's where the glorified lottery comes in, is like, because it's not like your backup tight end for I don't know, let's just say like Kincaid or Knox goes off one week. It's not that guy. It's like some Rico Dowdle who Malik Davis gets injured and Dowdle gets you know what I mean? Like, how do you stay competitive in contests? These pros, are they just throwing in that many lineups with optimizers to where they'll just find that diamond in the rough? Explain that.
So I avoid that situation completely. Like, for example, DraftKings has a $5 millionaire maker week 1.
I'm on it right now.
Yeah. So it's over 1 million entries into that, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't catch me dead playing in that. Just for that reason. And some other things you got to pay attention to is, the payout structure too, right? So first for that is $1 million. Second drops all the way down to $200,000. That's an insane gap between first and second place. So when I'm playing tournaments, they're not huge field tournaments. It's like I play a lot of single entry and 3 max tournaments, just because single entry, right? Everybody's on the same level ground. You enter one lineup. They're usually 1,000 to 3,000 people in that contest, so you don't have to have the galaxy brain play to win. Whoever wins that tournament probably would barely finish in like the top 10% of that mega lottery that we're talking about. So I try and take those out of the equation. And I'm just kind of a natural contrarian by nature, so I like, and that's a leak in my game that I've been trying to work on, is I'll look at ownership percentages, and in the past I would just fade all the highest owned guys and just kind of hope hope and pray, right, that those plays don't smash, because otherwise I'm dead. But it's a delicate balance of mixing in some of those guys and then just pivoting away. So everyone thinks, Detroit, Minnesota is going to go off in December because it's a dome game and we're avoiding, the weather in Cleveland or something like that. And it's just sometimes finding the angle of, well, maybe it's not going to go crazy in that game because they're passing and everyone's playing Jefferson and Cousins and Amon-Ra St. Brown. What if it's when he was on the Lions, a DeAndre Swift game? So you get a piece of that game playing DeAndre Swift instead of playing Jefferson and Cousins, because how many times have we gone in every week? It seems like we go into the week slate expecting certain things to happen, and then
never does. Yeah,
Joe Mixon goes off for 4 touchdowns, right? And so it's
unpredictable. Yeah,
right. So it's just taking different angles to different games and just thinking about, okay, how could it play out a little differently and trying to attack it that way.
So in doing that, are you creating like a game script for each game? Do you see some games clearer than others and you're focusing on those? What does that look like? Because to me, that's what I would do, right? Is I would sit there and I would look at each game and I would build my target based on my confidence level and how well I see the game and then how high scoring the game is. And then be like, all right, let's try to build a roster around these 5 games here.
Yep. That's certainly one method you could do, is just hyper focus a certain amount of games and create your player pool from there and just kind of attack those 3 to 5 games in different ways, as many as you can, right? The other way you could do it is just, so I do go game by game. Sometimes I'll just X out a game completely. If it's just absolutely putrid, I'll still consider, hey, could there be value? But again, it's all relative to price too and all that of the players. But I do, focusing on the higher scoring games is obviously, what most people are going to do. And it makes sense, right? That's where all the points are. You want where all the points are. So just trying to game script every game individually and thinking about all the different possibilities of each game.
So do you value then those, obviously when you're talking about high scoring games, are you talking about 2 good teams going at it? Like, the Bengals and the
AFC
Chiefs,
West.
Right.
AFC West has notoriously the last few years been, the high scoring shootout. I think last year it was like some ridiculous percentage of their games to start the year were 50 plus overs. I forget what the stat was, but they were, the conference that was slated to have the most, the highest scoring conference.
Yeah. But like, how do you value those comparative to like a massive underdog or a massive favorite? Like if a team just is supposed to beat up on the other team, like you were talking about the Ravens going against Houston. Like, do you value that team or that game because the Ravens are going to dominate them, or on the vice versa, Houston's going to be playing from behind, so they're going to need to be throwing the ball more? Like, does that factor in at all, or are you just looking for those 2 big dogs going at it?
No, I'll sprinkle. If I think that's what's going to happen, right, that the Ravens are just going to smash the Texans. Some people, that scares them off, right, a little bit, because they're thinking Lamar is going to get pulled in the beginning of the 4th quarter, which obviously isn't ideal. But the other thing you have to consider is the reason they're smashing them is because Lamar went ham. So
I think a good example here is the Eagles last year, right? Like They were scoring 4 touchdowns. It was 28-3 at half, and then you'd see them come out with a different game plan. So that's I think, speaking of that, like what did that look like in the fantasy space? Why, or in the DFS space? Like, would you be turned off to the Eagles in those games, or would you just hope? Would you maybe if the Cowboys came to Link or the Eagles were playing in Jerry's World, like that's a game that you may think that's going to be closer in the second half, and they're maybe shooting back and forth towards the end.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, competitive games are more appealing because you have a better chance of reaching that ultimate ceiling from everybody that you roster in that game. But the game script is also important to think about in terms. So if I think, going back to that Ravens example, like if I think the Ravens are going to smash the Texans and their Texans are going to be coming from behind a lot, I'm not playing Dameon Pierce, right? But there's not a scenario where he's going to go off if the game's 28-3 after the midway through the second quarter. So if I was going to play a Texan, it'd be Nico Collins, it'd be Tank, somebody like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Second half, they're going to be throwing the ball all half,
exactly,
that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then just targeting specific position group matchups, right? So looking at DVOA ahead of time and being prepared. Okay, the Bengals are playing Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's ranked first against the pass. But it's all nuanced too, because you got, who has Pittsburgh played to be first against the pass? Have they? Yeah. And it's week 3. You don't want to go too heavy into it because week 1 they played Colt McCoy, and then week 2 they faced Mac Jones. Obviously their numbers are going to be a little inflated probably. So just blending all that too, and so positional groups, offensive and defense. Like I tried to play almost no running backs against Philly last year because their D-line just
probably this year as well.
Everybody. Yeah, probably this year as well. It's probably not a wise bet,
Yeah.
So that's the other, going back to like the being contrarian thing, to be smart about it too, not just being contrarian just to be contrarian. Oh, no one's going to play Zeke against the Eagles this week because he's low owned for a reason. So could he sneak in a few touchdowns? Yeah, maybe, but there's probably better options elsewhere.
So I think, like, if I was to say right now how Ryan and I, how the Fantasy Roadshow is going to get involved into DFS, I would almost think of it as like this. I'm going to create 2 lineups, one 50-50 heads up lineup, one contest lineup. Ryan is going to do the same, and then we'll probably sit down together and we're going to do the same. So we have 6 lineups, right? 3 50-50 heads up, 3 contest. What would you recommend, I guess I would say, in terms of, like, let's say him and I have a $200 bankroll. We want to work with $200 at first. What would you allocate as a beginner who's just kind of, I would imagine we take a more conservative approach to start. I don't know. Would you recommend a beginner finding their niche, finding just kind of learning as you go, and how you kind of make those decisions?
Right. So obviously you want to keep the stakes pretty low. So I would probably take like 100 of that. So we're working with a $200 budget here. Yeah. Probably do $25 worth of that in $1 head-to-heads, and just have, so you can post or you can join. With that, quick tangent, I would post lineup, the head-to-head contests in DraftKings instead of
Joining other people.
Because you get a lot of sharks just waiting in the wings there, waiting for people to come in and join them. So I would, and there's some settings you can do on DraftKings. It's getting a little nitty gritty here, but limit to one person joining your head-to-heads. Otherwise, the same person could come in and
join all 25.
Join all 25 of your contests posted, and just you're either gonna win or you're crushed. So limit it to one person. And then I would take the other 75 of that and just divvy it up in low field
50-50s.
50.
And when you say low field, you're saying a 10, like, and you're saying low field as in dollar amount or the amount of players?
Both. Amount of players, you want as many as possible for 50-50s. Just because obviously in a 10-person contest, you would need to be in fifth or better, right? If there's 8,000 people in it, there's more room for error finishing in the top 4,000 of lineups. So more people, and then just they're all and single entry. I would, because they do have multiple entry cash lineups. I would keep it to single entry, especially for cash. And then for the other half, for doing tournaments, just kind of sprinkling in the different variety of tournaments that they have. So do some single entries, do some 3 maxes. And then if you want to dabble in the lottery style tournaments, they have 50-cent ones where you could 150 max into those. So I would set a player pool, use an optimizer, and have it spit out 100. So that way you're spending $75 to enter 150 lineups in that contest, and just to kind of see how that goes. If the other thing that it's going to take some weeks of getting used to it too, because you can't get discouraged week 1. You get absolutely wrecked. It happens there's ebbs and flows in DFS. Even the pros go through some low points, especially in tournaments. That's the way it works. You got it. You can't ride too high. You win a tournament your first week, you're not in God mode either. You probably ran hot. So
you're that, Mike.
I don't think I have to worry about my lineup coming, hitting one of those lotteries, because I've joined plenty of them, and just like literally every single player has to go off.
I wouldn't recommend it, but some people like them and they have fun doing them, and that's, be my guest, go at it, get after it. My recommendation would be, if you're going to enter a tournament, be sure you have the funds to max enter the amount of entries that they allow. Okay. So if you're going to play, in a $20 3 max, put in the $60 and put in 20 lineups, right? Don't just put in 2 lineups and hope to get lucky, because that's not going to work out in the long run. You might get lucky a few times, but long term, it's just not a good strategy.
So have you played those, like, you can do an actual draft, like as if you're
like the snake draft kind of?
Have you?
What's that about?
So they just, they put the player pool of everybody that week. It's usually like 10 or 12 people in it, and you just kind of snake draft a lineup just specifically for that slate. They're kind of cool. I wasn't super happy with my strategy kind of going into them. I was just kind of merging my DFS brain and my redraft league, and it
it seems like that could get a little dicey.
Success. So.
So maybe that's something that we should try, though, Ryan.
Yeah, they're fun. I mean, it's fun.
That's in our wheelhouse for sure.
Ryan and I like,
and it's done in like 5 minutes. So
Yeah, I have the confidence that I can walk into a room of 12 and
Mhm.
win that draft or
Yeah.
get top 2. You know how like the underdog best
Mhm.
ball, like we have been absolutely loving that because
Yep.
our confidence of that we can just see the board. We just know our rankings so well in our head. Like it's like going in with that confidence, knowing you can go top 2 in a draft room. Like I think
Mhm.
that's so fun. Drafting to me is maybe my favorite part about fantasy sports or fantasy football.
Right.
So give
I
me as
think
many.
that's majority of people as well.
Yeah,
So
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, drafting.
if you ask people, most people aren't going to say, I enjoy grinding the waiver wire
Yeah.
at 3:30 in the morning.
I
That's my
enjoy
favorite
making the
part.
wrong decisions on a weekly basis on my flex position.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Benching Mike Williams as he scores 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love when I'm playing some random kicker and they score 18 points and I lose by
Mhm.
fucking, well, yeah. Okay. So Ryan, do you have any other questions with DFS? I'm excited and it intrigues me, but I'm also scared because like,
No.
gosh, like I just, I know in the past that I've had success in the 50-50s. Like I just
Mhm.
know that the way that my brain works and how it structures lineups, I'm just confident that I could put together like a pretty good team based on value.
Mhm.
So that's where I've seen success. Contest is what scares me, I should say. And maybe you're right
Mhm.
that like I've been taking the wrong approach, that I'm your classic, noob that sees the shiny object like, ooh, I can win $1
Yep.
million. But realistically, like stay away from those. That's what I've
Yes.
learned
Right.
is be smart about what contest you join. Single entry, 3 max, that makes a ton of sense.
And
So yeah.
along those lines too, look at the payout structures on them. You don't want to be eating a bunch of rake into these contests too. So like when the prize pool and first place gets 25% or 30% of the entire prize pool, I try and stay away from those too because usually there's a huge gap. I like flatter payout structures. 10 to 15% of the prize pool goes to first place. Um, you know, it's not as sexy as saying, I'm going to win $1 million this week, but if you enter 200 bucks in and you win 2,000, that's a good day's work. That's
Yeah, I'd say
that's
so.
nothing that
Yeah.
snap
Yeah.
turn your
Yeah.
head up at.
Yeah. So one question that I was planning on asking, and now that I'm like thinking it through and looking at the daily fantasy, I know I mentioned when you're looking at week 1 right now, where
Mhm.
do you see based on someone's salary is a value? That being said, if you don't want to answer this question because a lot of that value is baked into who they're the matchups, and there's still so many factors, so many variables that
Yeah.
still have to be figured out. I was more so I guess I didn't think about when I asked that question originally, I didn't think about how much the matchups play into it as opposed to like where the rankings of those players are, if that makes sense. I don't know. You know what
No,
I'm trying to say with that?
it's all good. It's all good. Obviously, these opinions are subject to change in a
Yeah.
few weeks here. But week 1 is usually when you see the most value because, like, we have the pricing already. It's been out for a few weeks now,
Yeah.
and there's still so many variables that can change. So there's not a lot. There's some underpricing, like Anthony Richardson. I'm sure being named the starter today, or was that today or yesterday?
That
I
was
think it was
today
today. Yeah.
morning.
I
Yeah.
can't keep track anymore.
That was kind of
Yes.
like 50-50. Was he gonna, so he's only $5,600. I imagine he's gonna be like a popular punt play for people, just taking the gamble of the unknown, the rushing upside that he could provide. I don't think Jacksonville's defense is going to be particularly feisty this year, so that game could have some shootout potential. It's probably not something I would do in like a cash game, but he could be a tournament option because he could just suck, right, and just be completely awful.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've heard my take on Anthony Richardson, but that's what I'm leaning on. So
yeah, right. So you may want to load up on Jacksonville's D then, as an option if that's your conviction, right? Because unless Jonathan Taylor just comes back and is going to play and then just goes hog wild on him, which could happen. So you never know. We can take a quick look through the running backs here. Obviously not Kamara. He's suspended.
I saw that. Yeah. So what is that for? Like, is that just him priced there, like to give you an idea of what it might be like when he comes back, like in what range?
I'm sure it will be different. They probably just priced it with because we didn't know for 100% he was going to be suspended at that time. So they'll, even if a guy's injured, they'll still price him. I mean, they'll adjust weekly and min price a guy who's out for the year or anything. That's just how their algorithm works. But maybe like so it's PPR in DraftKings. I don't know if
half point,
full point PPR.
Okay.
Full point.
You get a bonus for quarterbacks when they reach 300 yards. You get a bonus when receivers reach 100 yards. So that does bring into play more of your traditional, quarterback, like a Kirk Cousins, right? In redraft leagues, you're not super excited about trotting Kirk Cousins out there, but if there's a there's a bonus for getting to 300 yards, that makes him a little more digestible to have in your lineup, something like that. And then defenses are always pretty random. So I never, that's where I really like to get different, because how many times have we been like, oh, the Ravens are locked in D1 this week. And in real life, they're an awesome defense, but that doesn't always translate to fantasy scoring.
Yeah.
We want sacks. We want interceptions, which are not very predictable. We think we can, but they're not. The random pick six, there's no way to predict that. So just getting a little different, like the Commanders against the Cardinals is going to be, the smash play that everyone's going to go to. And I'm gonna, I'm not gonna not play them in some of my lineups, but I'm not gonna like just lock 100% them. I'll try and sprinkle in a few other scenarios where I could like the Jaguars, right? We mentioned that. It's just the combination of the Commanders playing the Cardinals and that they're only $2,800. They're like middle of the road pricing for defense. So those two combinations are just going to make them wildly popular for good reason, but.
I guess like the defense to me is going to be tricky. It's just, you're going to, cause you're not going to want to take the most popular, but you're not going to want to miss out on, David Blau at quarterback or, so how do you like target? I know you're a contrarian. How do you target that defense when you're setting a roster?
Sometimes you just eat the chalk and you move on and you get different elsewhere.
That's what I would do. I think that's what I would do, man. Like,
but there's, you just look at totals, right?
Yeah.
Kind of try and identify some other low scoring options. The situations people are in. Are we getting, as is Richardson injured and we're getting Gardner Minshew this week, or just knowing who's more turnover prone quarterbacks, like who's not afraid to sling it around and get you a few interceptions. Like if Jameis were to start for the Saints, right? Like I have no problem starting a defense against him. He may crush me and throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, or he could really self-destruct. That's kind of who you want. You're probably not gonna try and target playing Brock Purdy, right? Because he's gonna throw the ball
Conservative
20
game
times and
Yeah.
they're gonna run the ball a bunch. So just keep in mind who the defense is playing and the type of quarterback they're facing, weather, point total, all those factors.
Yeah, that makes
Awesome.
sense.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I learned a lot. I want to have you back on closer to maybe week 1, or maybe after Ryan and I have messed around a little bit.
Yeah, you can tell us how we're doing with our
Yeah.
lineups.
Absolutely.
And definitely build some rosters with you. Have you back on the and talk through some DFS. I appreciate all the insight. Go Cowboys. So again, Sports Ethos draft guide. Mike's writing articles. He'll be during the season as well. So we will be sure to have you back on, and looking forward to that. But yeah, thanks for giving a little bit of a crash course on DFS. I'm sure we'll have questions. I'll be reaching out on Twitter, staying in touch. I know you've been in some of our mock drafts.
Yeah, we appreciate your contribution.
Yeah, we're gonna be ripping.
problem.
We're gonna be ripping those. I mean, we've been doing 3-4 a week, and we're gonna continue the next couple of weeks. So, very much appreciated.
Getting sniped by those auto drafters.
We'll set one up here pretty soon where we make sure it's a full lobby, but sometimes we'll just drop one in and see if anyone joins, just so that we're not going against 10 other computers. So,
One quick note I think I forgot to bring up. Definitely, if you've been playing a while and you aren't doing this, or if you're just getting into DFS, keep track of your results. And whether it's just you have a bankroll tracker thing, app, or just doing a simple Excel spreadsheet of your wins and losses. See what games you're doing good at and what games you need improvement at. I do that every year. I kind of do a self-reflection, compare it to previous years. Not to say I go away from the games that I'm losing at. I just know I got to change my process. What am I?
It's like anything.
What am I doing differently?
It's like anything else. You got to look at, take a step back and look at what you're doing so you can improve. Data analysis. Yeah. Great point. Well, we're gonna definitely start a little bit of a journey in DFS, and hopefully it goes well. Hopefully we can just blast all over the internet that Fantasy Roadshow is the next $1 million maker or whatever.
Yeah.
Just completely disregard everything you said. Join the $1 million maker.
All right.
Well, you're going to win the $1 million in best on Underdog.
Oh, Underdog.
So,
3 mil.
So
multiple.
So the whole year is just a free roll for you guys. Just go hot wild.
Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah. Thanks a lot for coming on, and everybody. Hope you learned all the roadies. Join us and tweet at us your lineups, and everybody. Yeah. Thanks for an awesome episode, and buckle up.